If I had $1 for every zombie game that exists, I'd have a lot of dollars, I guess. But of all the zombie games that I've played, I would have to say that Resident Evil 9 has the weirdest and most horrific. It's not the mangled bodies or the cannibalistic tendencies that freak you out. Instead, it's the way that this virus violently overthrows the mind of its host, forcing them to become passengers in their own bodies and fight just to retain a glimmer of humanity. Which begs the question, how aware are these former humans? And are they really even dead? If they're aware enough to act out former job duties and obsess over insecurities, imagine how their encounters with us must feel. Answering this question is going to require some boots on the ground. As a self-proclaimed and underqualified field anthropologist slash investigator, who better than myself for the job, right? We find ourselves in the Rhodes Hill Care Center, the home of numerous patients who were recovering from some type of chronic condition, or at least used to be that, because Dr. Victor Gideon wanted to rid the place of his evidence and Leon. Staff members were intentionally infected with the T virus, who, as you can imagine, went on to infect or kill everyone else in the facility. Among the infected staff, and the first that you encounter in the facility, is a chef who clearly does not believe in taking days off. Yeah, hey, I don't think that meat's gonna get any more fine than that. At first glance, you probably don't think much of this. Not even gonna lie to you, I didn't either. I was just focused on not becoming that. Still am, as a matter of fact. But yes, a guy just vigorously slamming down on his meat. I'm not really understanding here is probably what you're thinking. And I'd say that's a fair critique. These actions are not the actions of a body that's dead from the neck up. Even the ability to physically lift this giant ass knife requires some level of memory and thinking. But that's not what tickles my fancy about this decaying culinary specialist. If you slow down and heed what he's laboring to mumble over the loud thuds of his cleaver, you may notice his words are pretty consistent with that of a chef that oversees more junior level chefs. There's a term in the medical world called terminal lucidity, which is when a person experiences returning clarity and energy sometime before death, which can last days, weeks, even months. So I don't think it would be that far-fetched based off of what we're observing. This chef, although he has suffered severe and traumatic brain injury from the T virus, he is still lucid enough to recall information, in this case, what seems to be a recipe of some kind, and that he has a junior level chef to oversee, and is able to form some words. Just maybe, hear me out, Dr. Gideon and his evil band of misfit doctors were able to engineer a mutation of the virus that brings infected hosts to this state of near death repeatedly, which would explain why the chef has the clarity to perform the actions he's trained to do and not much else. Almost like shutting off a lawnmower mid-mow and just ripping the cord and repeating that over and over until the lawn is completely mowed. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, what's that? Huh? You don't really believe in what I'm saying? Weird, but fair. After all, I am no doctor or scientist, just doing a little research. But would more evidence help you feel better? I see. Well, I'm going to show you more anyway, so just stick around. Stick around. Another infected person that shares the similarities with the decaying chef is this disintegrating doctor. He doesn't really move much, not that I really gave him a chance to. But before I turn this professional into a pasty explosion, you can hear him making medical observations.
Cannot deny how fine the gastrointestinal tract is. Rotate the pelvis.
Like the chef and his ability to remember, the doctor is recalling information. While it is possible that he was studying the same thing every day, which would aid with him being able to recall some of the words he would say on a regular basis, I don't really agree that that is what's happening in this scenario. Considering that patient on the table and the information on the board, the words that he's saying, which are much more clear than the chef's, might I add, are consistent with that of an observation that he would be making at that specific point in time. And to be fair, it could be just the observation he was making at the point in time that he became infected. Again, I'm no doctor, and neither is he anymore. But the fact that he was able to make an observation and form clear words kind of supports the argument that he was experiencing lucidity. He was there. He was aware. He was there. He was aware. All of which obviously requires cognitive function, which is just a snobbier way of saying brain power. However, this does not only apply to jobs and duties that the zombies had before they became infected. In fact, you can almost cleanly split them into two different groups. The first group being made up of actions that stem from job or duty-based responsibilities. The other being made up of actions that stem from mental conditions or personality traits. Now, I'd of course throw the chef and the doctor into the job-based group, obviously. However, they're not the only two in that group. We do have the maids, who are hell-bent on cleaning specific areas and our face. We also have these guys, who, for some reason, must have been tasked with monitoring the light usage in the facility. Maybe it was to keep lights dimmed for light-sensitive patients, because if you watch them, they'll eventually say that the light is too bright, which led me to believe that the light was too bright for them, but they're not dressed like patients, so that's not very likely, I'd think. Whether that means it's too bright for them or too bright for the patients is up in the air. But either way, their brain has to process the light in order for them to be aware that it's too bright and for them to take the action of shutting it off, which does prove that they have some level of lucidity. However, this is not the only zombie that reacts to the environment. This fellow right here, he gets very, very pissed off when you make loud noises. Before zombification, this was a blind patient named Martin. In an attempt to treat Martin by ODing him on a medication, what? His condition was worsened and it made him very extremely excruciatingly sensitive to noise. It made the sounds basically be like screwdrivers straight into the ears. You know, like when you use a Q-tip to clean your ear because it feels good, but you're not really supposed to, but it feels good. So you do it anyway, and you go a little too far, and it hurts like the dickens. Now take that pain and not only multiply it by 10, but also imagine it deeper into your head. I'd be pretty pissed at people making noise too. This makes him the first member of our condition/personality trait based group. Congratulations, Martin. You've made it. He's made it. Although I labeled it the second group, I'd argue that this group has more convincing examples of awareness in the infected. The first, or second, I guess, being these ladies. Before infection, these two were already Marvel rivals. How do you become Marvel rivals with somebody that is in a care facility? Well, Selena and Eileen were both being treated for histrionic, I'm probably butchering that, histrionic personality disorder, aka they both suffered from legitimate cases of main character disorder so bad that they felt they needed to outsing one another, which drove them to opposite wings of the facility to perform for their own audiences. So healthy rivalry, at least. Post-infection, the burning desire for attention and to compete with one another is still on full display, because these two can be found singing well before you even see them. Drawing melodies from their memory and using their ability to process noise to listen to their voice and adjust as any singer would, and also do this. An emotion like jealousy must be crazy strong if it lives on past the brain being hijacked and continues to drive you to compete. The crazy thing is, as intense as these two are, they're not even the biggest example of emotional distress in the facility. And I don't mean Grace, because she's a great character to play as, because let's be honest, we'd all be the scared one in this situation, not Leon. She's a mess. Can't blame her though. Cannot blame her. The Chunk brothers were both being treated for irregular eating patterns. At least I think, because why in the world would you treat an issue of not being able to feel full by removing the part of the brain that creates that feeling of being full? Seems counterintuitive. This obviously did not solve the problem. No. Instead, it amplified it. These guys were not only angry as hell, but they were gobbling up everything. Pumps, pacemakers, flesh. The T-virus caused these two brothers to mutate more extreme than most of the other infected. But what they kept were their deep insecurities and their spatial awareness. Yes, all of the zombies have some level of spatial awareness. That's very true. But Thomas demonstrates it the most. Not only will he follow you, but because of his massive size, he has to navigate each turn and corner with way more intent than most of them would. He's also able to recognize when he's not able to fit through a door frame that would otherwise probably harm him. Timothy, not quite as much. He was just wrecking everything, as one does. Plus, he wasn't around as long for us to really see how he behaves in an environment. As a man of larger stature myself, it's easier to figure out why Thomas yells at you. No doubt he knew he was getting bigger before he got infected. In most cases will cause insecurities and embarrassment. I would know. So when we hear Thomas yelling, it's important to know where these words are coming from to really understand how they relate to being aware. And dealing with those things also usually causes you to become hyper aware too. You know, the feeling that everyone's looking at you and judging you. So Thomas must really be going through it. With Thomas and Timothy rounding out the group, I nearly decided not to include Mary. She's right behind me, isn't she? And so I nearly decided not to include Mary. Would leave her to her own, like, mutant super mutant group. Mary is a bit of a special case. A little spoiler warning here. Nothing too story ruining, but if you don't want anything to be spoiled, I completely understand and skip to this timestamp. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mary was given infected blood prior to the care center's outbreak. Gideon's pursuit for information that he didn't have access to led him to infusing blood into a bioengineered little girl, in hopes that she would inherit memories from the target subject, who I won't name just in case you weren't able to skip ahead in time. The infusion obviously failed at its main goal and gave Mary disproportionate body parts like long feet and giant hands. If that weren't bad enough, it gave her goddamn super strength, which explains the gaping holes in the concrete and this dead guy. On the surface, Mary just seems like your basic stalker type enemy in any Resident Evil game. But there is a major moment where Mary displays not just awareness of Emily, but also recalls that Emily is basically her sister. Or one of her dolls. But either way, she could have very easily used Emily as sustenance. Instead, she placed her in a bed in a locked down cell, surrounded by her actual dolls. Kinda shows that she wants her to be safe, right? If that doesn't demonstrate an ability to be aware and experience feelings like a living human would, I don't know what else would, to be quite honest. I think you're just being selfish to not see it at all. It's possible that Mary's monitored infusion and transformation played out differently because she wasn't straight up infected by traditional means. But there's way too many similarities to be ignored, which places her firmly in the personality-based group. Could these actions be written off as involuntary muscle spasms and sparks from remaining neurons? Sure, but that's not very fun to think, is what I'd say if you directly opposed my view. But the ability to repeat job duties, the ability to recall information, the ability to navigate spaces, and the ability to feel human emotions, these all come together and make Resident Evil 9 zombies the weirdest I have ever seen. Not just weird because they're stuck in a loop of hell of job duties and strong emotions. I mean, that is admittedly pretty weird for a zombie, but also weird as in, god damn, that's horrific. We are not kind to these things whatsoever, and rightfully so. They want to snack on us. But if there is someone stuck inside of there while the virus is in the driver's seat, I sure as hell hope they can't feel pain, because oh boy. I love doing these video essays with the sort of anthropological lens, especially for horror games. So if you like opening your ears and or eyes for them, thank you. And I want to hear what specific aspects of other games I should launch my next investigations into. So don't be shy. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you next time.